Oh,
Oh,
and now we are live.
cool.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legal Lunch and Learn, a mostly bi-weekly live show where we ask a lawyer your questions on a legal topic. My name is Charlie Long, and I'm a paralegal here at Maryland Legal Aid. Along with me and currently behind the scenes is our amazing production engineer, Alec Chase, without whom none of this would be possible. The last time we were here, if you remember, Jenny Nance was here with Nicholas McDaniels, who's the managing partner of Lewis McDaniels LLC and director of Law and Leadership Program at Mergenthaler High School. He was here as well with Jada Brown, one of his students from the Law and Leadership Program, speaking with us about the basics of custody, which is great because that kind of ties into what we're going to be speaking about this week with Stacey Bensky.
Yep.
And we are going to be speaking about arrears and driver's license suspensions and the PIP program. So if you have any questions about this topic, please feel free to put them in the comments down below or send it in a message. Now, no advice here establishes a client-attorney relationship, especially not with me because I am not a lawyer. I'm just here to get you the information that you need. However, if you do have an immediate legal problem, please contact us at Maryland Legal Aid by phone at 410-451-2805 or by email at lawyer@mdlab.org. And for those who are in need of captions, this live broadcast will be uploaded to YouTube. Now, let's get into it. Welcome, Stacey. How are you?
Hi, Charlie. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. You're here to speak with us about arrears, which I think is a big problem or an issue that we see a lot of times at clinics and through the hotline. But just do me a favor and just give us a definition of what an arrear is for those who may not know.
Sure. So specifically what we're going to talk about today is child support arrearages. So like you said, of course, like child support, it ties in with family law and like what you guys talked about last week at the Lunch and Learn with Custody. The child support arrearages that we're going to talk about today are specifically those that go along with people who have their child support that's serviced through the Child Support Enforcement Agency.
Okay.
So the Child Support Enforcement Agency, there's one, and I'm really sorry, my dog is barking in the background. I apologize. She's just saying hi to everyone. So the Child Support Enforcement Agency, there are, basically there's a federal child support enforcement laws that have to be followed. And then through that, they give money to the states to run their own programs. So the states just have to follow certain federal rules. But they're really run by the states. And then within the states, there are individual offices through each county. So what we're talking about specifically are the people who have their child support service through the agencies because they are in a unique, sort of have a unique set of issues that go along with that. Because of course there are some people who they owe child support, but it's done, through the court, but it's not then serviced through, there aren't enforcement procedures such as driver's license suspension, such as automatic earnings withholding orders. Those are only done through the agency, the child support agency. So when I say the agency today, I'll be referring to the Child Support Enforcement Agency.
Not okay, and not the courts, really. Okay.
Right. Well, it's because it was a court order that was put in through the court. But I guess what I mean is there could be, let's say you got a divorce and you just, through your divorce, it said that the non-custodial parent, meaning the parent that has the child the less amount of time, has to pay child support, but it's not then enforced. It's like, okay, there's a court order. If there was an issue, then someone could, file for contempt or something in the courts. But these are ones that are continue after the court order, continue to be enforced through a state agency versus just the parents sort of doing it on their own.
Okay. Now I know you said before that this was kind of like federally mandated and trickles down through the states. And I know last week they mentioned, in some custody cases or support cases, that is just written into the law. Like there's no challenging it really, no changing it. Is it the same thing with arrearages, do you think, or?
So there are ways that you can, I think, or if are you talking about like, are there ways to get your child support arrearages forgiven? Is that what you mean, kind of?
Yes, like
So
is it
yeah,
changeable? Like, can you do those things here, or is it just like hard law? Here it is, point
so,
blank.
well, there are ways certainly that you can, depending on what kind of arrearages you have, there are ways to get your child support arrears forgiven, which I can go into. But one thing where you're talking about, like, are you able to modify? That also is something we could discuss it. We could bring up the I guess what you're saying is something, stuck, is it set in stone, right? So one
Yes,
thing about
exactly.
child support is you can always modify your child support.
Okay.
So if there's a change in circumstance, so it has to be a significant change in circumstance, then certainly that would be a reason to file to modify your child support. Now that is something technically they're supposed to do through again, if your child support is one of those that's serviced through the child support enforcement agencies, technically, if you let the agency know that there's been a change. So let's say you were working, but then you've become disabled, and so now your only income is disability. Then you certainly could get that modified, but I'd say usually the faster way to do it and more efficient way to do it is not going through the agency, is usually filing to modify directly through the courts. And then in terms of, and that's something also we can get in a little more in depth into. I think next week we're going to go more into like what to do if you are disabled and you have, SSI, SSDI, anything like that. But it just for anyone, even if you're not disabled, just to know that if there's a change in circumstance, that certainly might be a reason to file to modify your child support with the court. And in terms of arrears, so child support arrears, certain arrears can be forgiven. And those are arrears that are owed to the state. So I can go a little more into, so I know you had mentioned at the beginning the PIP program, or payment incentive program, through the Child Support Enforcement Agency. So essentially what that means is that if you make 24 consecutive payments, you could have your child support arrears forgiven, but those are only your state owed arrears. So that probably begs the question, how does one end up owing arrears to the state, right? Because I think usually when traditionally you think child support, you think, well, non-custodial parent owes child support to the custodial parent, right?
Right. You think this is going automatically to the parent and then, of course, to the child, not necessarily to the state.
Right. So for our clients at Maryland Legal Aid, I think probably a lot of people who are listening know, but it's, of course, free legal services for clients who are below the poverty level. So for our clients who are, low income, a lot of times, actually, probably more often than not, at least a portion, if not all of their child support arrears end up being owed to the state. And that happens because, essentially if the custodial parent, and again, just to reiterate, custodial parent means the parent that has the children or the child or the children the majority of the time. And, you might say mom or dad, but that's really not always the case, right? But, sometimes people might think of it as, custodial parent. Sorry, that's my dog again. People might think of it as custodial parent is mom, non-custodial parent is dad. That's not always the case. But so I'm going to go with custodial parent and non-custodial parent. Okay, it's a little bit longer to say, but it is more accurate because it's not always mom. Doesn't always
Right.
have.
It could be grandma or.
Yeah, or it could be that dad is, has the kids more of the time, or it could be grandma, it could be, an aunt or uncle that has custody. Who knows? But in any case, so if the custodial parent applies for public assistance, meaning what we call TCA, it used to be called welfare. It's not called that anymore, but TCA is temporary cash assistance, or daycare vouchers, so that, the custodial parent can go to work, so they can have vouchers to help them pay for the kids to be in daycare. What happens is when you apply for that, when the custodial parent applies for that, essentially they, in order to receive those benefits, they have to agree and sign something that says that they are agreeing to what's called assign their child support to the state. So they don't get child support. When the parent, the non-custodial parent pays child support, it goes to the state. It doesn't go to, the custodial parent. And so what I think there's a sort of a well-known narrative in this country that sort of welfare, or what we now call like TCA, and other states they might call it something else, is a handout. It's not really a handout. It's the state is getting reimbursed, and they're being reimbursed through child support. And that's why the custodial parent has to agree to assign their right to child support to the state. Now, there are amounts, small amounts that are what's called like pass-through amounts, where there are certain amounts that can be paid actually to the family and gets, I guess, what they would call pass-through from the state to the family, but the majority of it, that's not how it works. So for our clients who are low income, if they miss a payment, then that's how you accrue or you rack up these child support arrears. They're a missed payment. So the missed payment then later is not owed to the parent, it's owed to the state. So there could be, tons of reasons why someone missed a payment. They could have, lost employment. They could have fallen in hard times. They could be disabled. We have a lot of clients who they accrue very large amounts of arrears because they're waiting for their disability benefits, which that process generally takes years, because more often than not, you're denied disability the first couple of times that you apply. And when I say, I mean like disability benefits. And then even once someone starts getting disability benefits, often they don't know they needed to file, like what we talked about earlier. They didn't know they needed to file to modify their child support. So their arrears could continue to accrue or build up, but they had no idea until years and years later. And then maybe they start getting retirement, which is able to be garnished, and they realize they have this thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of child support arrears
stacked up.
Yeah.
I want to go back to touch on something really quickly that you mentioned that I don't think a lot of people realize. When you're speaking about the PIP program and getting the daycare vouchers or applying for TCA, you said it's not a handout. So these people aren't getting that money, the daycare vouchers or the TCA, and then also getting the child support. It's not money on top of money. It's more like a loan almost.
Yeah, that's how I think of it. And I think most people don't know that. I also think that it makes it really hard for people to get out of this, or families get in this, stuck in this cycle of poverty. Because I think, the point of the child support administration, you called it, or enforcement, is supposed to be to, promote stability, financial stability, for like children and families. And that's supposed to be the point, I believe, of, the TCA or, welfare, whatnot also. But it's hard for someone to get, or if you're even if these families are not the traditional families that we think of that are in one home, right? So it might be that they're in separate homes, but at the end of the day, if they're parents that are supposed to be supporting a child, right, it makes it really hard for these families to get out of a cycle of poverty. When really it's just, this money that's given is owed back to the state.
Just a quick question from someone. Can arrears affect your credit when you're speaking about financial stability?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
the situation in the cycle of poverty. It can affect your credit if you're not paying these things.
Yep, absolutely. And actually, the Child Support Enforcement Agency, they automatically notify the credit reporting agencies once you have a certain amount of arrears. And, I don't know that off the top of my head, but since we are going to do part 2 next week, if you can remind me, I will find that exact law. Because after a certain amount of arrears, they automatically notify the credit reporting agencies. So going back to the payment incentive program. So how is there a way to forgive these arrears, right? So if your child support arrears are owed to the custodial parent, there's not a way to get those forgiven, unless the custodial parent agrees to forgive them. But if they're owed to the state, there is something called the payment incentive program. Essentially what it says is so you have to apply to the program first, okay? And then if you make 12 consecutive payments, then half, so 50% of your arrears the state has to then wipe out or erase or forgive 50% of your arrears. If you make 24 consecutive payments, so 12 more, then the state has to forgive all of your arrears. Now, again, I'm sorry, when I say I'm saying state owed arrears. They have to forgive all of your state owed arrears. And this is governed by the law that governs it's in the Family Law article of the Maryland Code, and it's section 10-112.1, in case anyone wanted to look it up. Now, one thing about the program is that once you apply for the program, they also have to count, in counting the 12 months or 24 months, when I say they, I mean the agency or the Child Support Administration, Child Support Agency, they have to count the prior consecutive payments that you've made. So we have had clients, for example, who come to us and let's say they have been garnished, they only owe arrears to the state. So all state owed arrears. And they've been garnished, let's say maybe they're getting SSDI or which would be disability, or they're getting Social Security retirement. And they've been being garnished for over 2 years by the time they come to us. So, and consecutively, because of course, if it's a garnishment, like you're not missing a month, right? It's every single month. So by the time they come to us, they've already made 24 consecutive payments. So what we'll do is we'll apply, help them to apply for the payment incentive program or PIP or whatever, that's whatever the, I guess, nickname for it would be. And then basically what the law says is that the previous consecutive payments have to be included. Now that's been a little bit of an issue. So, I mean, certainly people can apply for the payment incentive program on their own, but I would encourage them to come to us because we have seen an issue enforcing that part of the law that says like you have to count those previous consecutive payments. So what that means is we'll apply and the arrears need to be zeroed out right away, right, immediately, because they've already made the non-custodial parent, our client has already made that many, over 24 consecutive payments. And we've definitely seen an issue with that not being properly enforced, where someone applies and I should say, I'm sorry, the only requirement to be accepted into the program is that essentially you are low income. So if you qualify for legal aid, you're going to qualify for the payment incentive program also. Essentially, I just want to, let me see if I think you have to be, I know it's a certain percentage below the poverty level, and it's similar to our financial requirements. So, and you know what? So that's something else that we'll look at for next week, so I can have that exact.
Absolutely. We're going to be, for those who are watching, we are going to be touching on the payment incentive program again when we meet for the next Lunch and Learn, as we talk about how this ties into disability payments.
Yep. But I would say that is another reason why I would encourage people to come to us. We can help them with the payment incentive program, because I've also seen where people were denied, even though they qualified for the program, and we, killed it for them. So essentially, if you're denied if you apply for the payment incentive program and they're saying you don't qualify, you can appeal that. And we've helped people to do that, because really the only qualification, like I said, is that you are that certain percentage level below the poverty level. And again, I'm not seeing exactly what it is right now, but I will look that up. But basically, so if you come to legal aid and you qualify for our services, you should qualify for the payment incentive program, and
of course,
help you to apply and make sure that it's enforced, that the agency is properly, that the law is being properly enforced. So if you already have previous consecutive payments, those should be counted. You shouldn't have to start from the day you apply. It should start your 24 consecutive payments that count should start from the previous consecutive payments you made as well.
Arrangements that have been happening.
Right.
So I'm assuming if you miss, say you go 6 months and you miss your 7th month payment, does it start all the way over again?
Yeah, so it does. There is an exception though for if you miss up to 6 months if you lost employment if due to no fault of your own. But again, that's something where like the agency is not going to really look at that exception. That would be something where like, again, would be a reason come to legal aid, because we can help you to, make sure that if you do have a valid reason. So if you, like I said, lost employment through no fault of your own, but it can only be for up to 6 months of missed payments, that they can consider that still consecutive, even if you've missed those months. You can potentially fit under one of those exceptions.
Okay, this might be a question for next week, but we did have another question come in. Is it legal for an employer to offer benefits to nearly everyone, but find a reason to exclude only a few?
To offer benefits, like what kind of benefits?
We'll find out. I'll speak to Alec to see if we can get more of a distinction about this question about the benefits. Okay. And then we'll circle back to it.
Okay.
But let's switch directions and talk about something that we see, like I said, that we see a lot at clinics and everything. People having their their driver's license suspended for child support or missing child support. Why does this happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's really common that we see. We see that all the time, like you said, like at clinics or people, who come into our office for. So they're essentially what happens is the child support agency. So again, these are unique. So having state owed arrears, having your driver's license suspended, these are issues unique to if your child support is being enforced through the state agency, right? So essentially, it's an automatic system where driver's license suspension system, where if you have more than 60 days, so equal to 2 months worth of arrears, then your driver's license will be automatically suspended. Essentially, and let me give you guys, I'm going to give the guys the law in case anyone else wants to look that up. It's in the same as the other one in the Family Law article of the Maryland Code, section 10-119. So just to quote the law exactly, what the law says is the administration, meaning the child support administration, may notify the MVA. So when an obligor means someone who is the non-custodial parent, right? The person who has in order to pay child support, is 60 days or more in arrears, so has missed 60 days or 2 months of payments. So the reason I wanted to read that part of the law is that the law says they may notify the MVA, but the reality is the child support agency has an automatic system. So no matter what, they're going to, if you have more than 2 months worth of arrears, you're automatically in this pool of people. It's sort of like a lottery, it is like a random lottery where they pick, I'm not sure how many, but X amount of people each month to refer to the MVA, but it's automatic, even though it's a may. So that is what we see a lot, because for our clients who are low income, they might have, like we talked about before, they might have fell on hard times, they might have missed, lost their job, be looking for a new job, or, they might be working, but just not making enough to, pay their full amount of child support. So maybe they're paying a portion of it, but not all of it. So it's something that's really common. Or if our clients are, like I said, waiting for disability benefits, and you're, in a process of maybe you're receiving temporary disability benefits for years and years before you actually get full disability benefits. But either way, your arrears are going to just continue to accrue. So it's a common
It's
Yeah. Once it builds up, it's like, well, you're in the hole. So how do you get out of the hole, right? So the problem, especially for our clients who are, let's say, sorry, in the hole, that's not the most, like legal term, but right, if you've built
most
up.
common. I think most people know what that means.
Right. So the problem is because you're automatically in that pool of people that could be referred to the MBA for license suspension, once you have, 6 months worth of arrears, I'm sorry, 6 months, 2 months, sorry, 60 days or 2 months worth of arrears. Even if you're trying to catch up, right? If your balance, so your arrearage balance is at least 2 months or 60 days more or more of arrears, you're still going to be in that pool of people so you could potentially be referred over and over and over again to the MBA for license suspension until you get your arrearage balance below 2 months worth of arrears, even if you've picked up again and you're paying.
So if your payments are $100 a month and you've managed to pay and you accrue a bill of, let's say, $1,000, and you've paid off 700 to 800 of those dollars, your name is still getting put in that lottery.
Yeah, but that's going to be, I know that you're using just a nice round number, but it's always going to be more than that. I've never seen it that low. But yes, even for people who are low income, but yeah, you're still right. Even if you've paid off a large amount of it, if for math's sake, right, like to make it an easier number, if you still have $200 worth of arrears, because that would be, if your payment is 100, 2 months would be 200, you still owe, even if you've paid off so much, and even if you're paying every month. But that actually brings me to, there are some exceptions in the law that I would want to, and why I would want to encourage people to come to legal aid for if your driver's license is suspended, because now, of course, is everyone going to fit into these exceptions? No, but you might be, and there are some people who actually, they are, we could assist, or they, even just by them going to the agency, could have their driver's license reinstated, but they don't even know that that's an option. So one of those is that if you are paying on your arrears every month, so either through a court, so basically if there's like a payment agreement put in place that was either put in place through a court order or just directly with the child support agency, and you are paying on that agreement, okay, then the child support agency is not allowed to refer you to the MBA for license suspension. Unfortunately, because of their automatic system, they still do, and it happens all the time. So if you are in a situation where you're paying, so I would say the sort of easiest way to know that if you might fall into this exception would be if you currently have an earnings withholding order. So if you have an earnings withholding order, you very well likely might fall into this exception, because the earnings withholding orders almost always automatically include an extra amount that goes towards arrears. So if that's the case and your driver's license is still being suspended, give us a call, because this is most likely, I can't say 100%, but most likely this is something that shouldn't be happening under the law, because the law specifically says that the child support agency is not allowed to refer you to the MBA if you're paying every month, complying with that court order or agreement with the agency that you've made to pay on your arrears. So that's a big one that people don't know, that, hey, my license isn't supposed to be suspended. A lot of people are just like, well, this is what it is. This is a state agency, they're doing what they're supposed to do. But really, the agency's not in compliance with the law if they're still suspending your license.
That is good to know. I do want to just say, for everyone who is watching in these kind of situations or any sort of legal situation that you're having, it never hurts to reach out to a lawyer to ask questions and get advice, so you don't get tangled up in arrearage payments and things like that. So what can be done if someone gets their license suspended and they want it reinstated? Because I know a lot of the times with this sort of situation, the custodial parent, and a lot of times it's the mom in some of these cases, they're like, no, I don't want the dad's license suspended because he needs to go to work to help pay for X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z, or the custodial parent in general will say,
Yeah. Yeah, well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it seems extremely counterintuitive. And, you don't have to be a lawyer to see how sort of backwards that is, right? That most people, in order to go to work and get, gainful employment, you need a driver's license. So it's pretty backwards, right? And not only that, but we've also had clients where our client is the non-custodial parent, but the custodial parent tells us, either I don't want his license, or, again, not always him, but let's just say with the non-custodial parent, I don't want their license suspended. But you said because it makes it a lot harder for them to, obviously, to keep a job, to work, to get a job, and then to keep a job. But also because it makes it a lot harder for them to spend time with their kids and to help out in other ways. So maybe they can't help out financially because maybe they are disabled, or they're limited in, how much money they can make, or they can only help out financially to a certain point, but they could help out by taking the kids to school, being involved in other ways. There are a lot of other ways that parents parent besides just financial, besides just being there financially. And it makes it really hard, to even help out and be there in any other way if you don't have a driver's license. It makes it hard to do anything. And
I think that's a great point to bring up, that it's not just about paying for the child support or arrearages when it comes to the driver's license suspension, but also them just being able to spend time with their kid. Sometimes those moments between picking them up for school and dropping them off can be really important, or just really valuable time for a parent and the child.
Yeah, absolutely. But to your question, so what can someone do to potentially have their license suspension lifted and have their license reinstated? So in the law, the major ways to get your license reinstated under the law, under the 10-119, would be if you're paying on your arrears every month, right? The other would be if you need your license for current or potential employment. And the other would be if you have a documented disability resulting in a verified inability to work. So sort of like we talked about before with the people who have earnings withholding orders that are paying, and really the law says they shouldn't be referred to the MDA for license suspension. Similarly, a lot of our clients who receive disability benefits, their licenses are suspended anyway, but really under the law they shouldn't be, because if you're receiving SSI or SSDI, by definition, you have a documented disability that says you have a verified inability to work. So if you're in a situation, you're someone who gets SSI or SSDI and your driver's license is suspended for child support, like this is something that shouldn't be happening. This means that the agency is not in compliance with the law, and reach out to us. Your license should be reinstated. Now, needing your license for current or potential employment is a little more complicated because depending on what county you're in, some of the agencies are not, even if you show that you need your license for work, are not inclined to reinstate your license, and they might need very, very specific documentation of why you need your license for that specific job. So it can be difficult, but it's still something definitely that if you need your license for current or future employment, you should, either reach out to us or go to the agency, and it should be a reason that your license should not be suspended, based on the law. It's just might be a little bit more difficult to get it reinstated.
Right. That does seem, it's just like a huge problem that no one wants, like you're already trying to like better someone else's life, and then like you might fall behind because of who knows what you could fall behind for, and then they get you just like that.
Right. So it's like you're being punished over and over and over again for the same thing. Because like I said, if you're always going to be in that pool of people who could potentially have their license, in that automatic lottery, be referred to the MBA, right? So, even if you're trying to get a job, or even if you got a job, if you still have an arrearage balance of 2 months or 60 days, of arrears, right? Like you said, it's like you're still, it makes it really hard for people to, like we said, kind of get out of the hole, right? Because if let's say you got a job, but then your license is suspended, and this has happened plenty of times where people come to us and they're like, I have, now I've lost my job, or I'm on the verge of losing my job, because they found out my license is suspended. So, yeah.
Well, reach out to a lawyer if these things are happening to you. Never hurts to ask questions and see what is available for you. Another question, can your driver's license, say the child is over 18 at this point, you still owe arrearages. Can your driver's license still be suspended at that point because you owe the arrears?
Yep, and it happens all the time. And we actually have clients who are grandparents, and they are involved with their adult children, involved with their, I have a client who, the main reason he needed his license was because he would help his adult children, he would help take their kids, so their grandkids, to school. But his license was still being suspended, his driver's license was still being suspended for child support arrears that were owed from when his kids were, how old, so 20, 30 years ago. And a good portion in that case of those arrears actually were owed to the state. Not to the custodial parent, state owed arrears. So yeah, and again, it comes down to that automatic system that the child support agency uses, right? So if you have that balance of arrears, that's 2 months worth of arrears, you're still in that system, even if your kids are older than we are, and yeah,
it's just something that can just follow you around for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and it keeps people really in a cycle of poverty, is what we have seen, at legal aid.
Another question that we have, is there any way to go back to challenge arrears during a period when they shouldn't have been assessed, such as when the person was getting disability? Or what about when someone is incarcerated, can they modify child support during that period?
Yeah, so so you can ask for basically an audit, like a review of your, or like sort of like an audit or an accounting or what you always have a right to do that. And actually, if you disagree with it, you can also appeal that to what's called OAH. OAH is the Office of Administrative Hearings. And that's similar to like the license suspension. If your license is suspended, like I was saying, come to legal aid, but you also could do it on your own, but would be to ask for an investigation. And then if you don't agree with that, you can appeal the results of that to OAH. And same with if you ask for basically an accounting statement. But I will say it is really hard if it's from a long time ago. The arrears, it's really hard to sort of go back and prove like, well, for, this period of time or that period of time, what if it was a very long time ago. That's a lot easier to do if it's, if it's more recent. Now in terms of incarceration, now, if it was, and you know what, so this is something we can, next week talk about, because I don't want to misquote the law, but what they're supposed to do is if you're incarcerated it's only if it's for a certain amount of time or longer, then your arrears should actually automatically be forgiven for that time period. But that's also something that often doesn't happen, even though the law says it should. So that's something where is a situation where you likely would want to request an audit. But you would want to have, documentation from Department of Corrections or, whatever it might be that shows the exact time periods that you were incarcerated and what you were sentenced. Because I know that law, it's if you were sentenced to, I believe it's something like 15 months or longer, then that's when that automatic forgiveness of any arrears, basically it automatically should pause the accrual of your arrears during that time.
Okay. Those are really great question. Another one that came in, which I think some of us already know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Are arrears affecting anyone's stimulus payments, economic EIC payments, anything like that? Are those being taken out of those as well?
Yeah, unfortunately, so the first payment, this first stimulus check was allowed to be, excuse me, to be garnished for child support arrears. The second and third, they did change the law, so that should not have happened. It's still, there were some situations where it did, but the first one, unfortunately, what we saw is that not only was the stimulus payment intercepted automatically by child support, but if the non-custodial parent owed anything to the state, it was automatically applied to the state. And that was in pretty much, I believe, every case. And I believe that's because, so what the federal laws say about how payments have to be distributed to, if they're owed to like the state or if they're owed to the custodial parent, essentially tax intercepts or any sort of federal intercept goes to state owed arrears. So again, to reimburse the state for TCA or daycare vouchers that the custodial parent has received on behalf of the child. So any type of federal federal intercepts goes to reimburse the state. So those went to state owed arrears. So it was, the stimulus checks were taken from the non-custodial parent and didn't even go to the custodial parent or to the child. So that was really unfortunate. And then with the second and third stimulus checks, so they did change the law so that they're not supposed to be intercepted by child support, but we did see, unfortunately, it still did happen a few times for people who, if you didn't receive your stimulus check, you could request it through when you filed your taxes. And unfortunately, if you did it that way, if you requested it through your taxes, which I know a lot of people did because for whatever reason they just didn't, it didn't get to them yet or whatnot when they were filing their taxes. So I guess then they were automatically intercepted because I guess the system viewed it as like a tax refund, but it wasn't a tax refund, it was the stimulus. So
right.
We have a couple cases right now where we're actually still in the process of trying to appeal that, but it's something we can try, but I'm not sure. But if it was that first stimulus check, there's really, unfortunately, that's just what the law said is the state was allowed to the state agency was allowed to intercept it for child support. But for the second and third, if it was as a result of a tax intercept, it's something you might be able to appeal.
Cool. Awesome. So I do want to address a Facebook question that we got earlier on. Is it legal for an employer to offer benefits to nearly everyone, but find a reason to exclude only a few? They were asking about retirement bonuses. Unfortunately, that doesn't fit into the topic we're speaking about right now, but I would like to encourage you to please reach out to us at lawyer@mdlab.org so we can get your question answered. We can also figure out what kind of lawyer you should be contacting. So like I said already, Stacy's going to be here in a couple weeks again. We're going to be talking about the payment incentive program. What else are we going to be speaking about, Stacy?
I think more specifically, what you can do if you are getting disability benefits and they're being garnished for child support. I think those will be the main topics. We're going to go more over, like child support arrears that are owed to the state, because that's so important for people to know, hey, those can be forgiven. And then, if you're receiving disability benefits or disabled and, still being garnished for child support, what can you do about that?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us all here on Legal Lunch and Learn.
Thank you.
Can't wait until next week. If you all have any questions about what we just spoke about, I know we just dumped a lot of information off. please ask those questions, message us, shoot us an email. If you have any questions about anything we're going to be speaking about next week, go ahead, shoot us an email, send us a message on Facebook.
Oh, and I was gonna say, I don't know if you already said in the beginning that our community lawyering hotline phone number also. I don't know if that's something that I don't know. But that's another way to reach us, right?
Of course, like the community lawyering hotline, CLI hotline, as most of us know it as, is open to take in voicemails. If you do have any questions about the arrearages and things like that, the phone number is 443-451-2805. Again, that's 443-451-2805 to get in touch with us over at CLI. But without further ado, unless Stacy, do you have anything else?
No, that's all. I hope everyone found this really helpful. And I am an attorney in our community lawyering or CLI program at Maryland Legal Aid. So we are here and happy to help.
And if you find this video helpful, please share it, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you share videos. And until next time, friends, see you later.